Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his face as he struggled to keep up with his squad. The training exercise on the UES Meridian was supposed to be simple, but nothing was ever simple for Jake. While his teammates moved like machines, precise and fast, Jake stumbled over his own feet. "Morrison, what the hell are you doing?" Sergeant Lisa Carter's voice crackled through his helmet radio. A blind monkey could do better than that. Jake tried to answer, but his breathing was too heavy. The enhanced soldiers around him weren't even winded. Corporal Alex Rodriguez had already finished the obstacle course twice. Specialist Maya Singh was cleaning her weapon, bored. Jake was still on the first section, trying to climb a wall that everyone else had jumped over. The year was 2387, and humanity had spread across the galaxy. Most soldiers were enhanced now, their bodies improved with genetic modifications and cybernetic implants. They were faster, stronger, and smarter than regular humans. Jake was supposed to be enhanced too, but something had gone wrong during his procedure. His implants barely worked, and his genetic modifications had failed completely. "I'm trying, Sergeant," Jake gasped into his radio. "Trying isn't good enough," Carter replied. "The enemy won't wait for you to catch up." Jake finally made it over the wall, but he was 20 minutes behind everyone else. His squad stood in a circle, watching him with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. These were the elite soldiers of the United Earth Forces, and Jake was dragging them down. "Maybe you should transfer to supply duty," Rodriguez suggested. "You know, somewhere safe." "I can do this," Jake said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. Dr. Ryan Phillips, the ship's medical officer, had run every test possible on Jake. His body rejected most enhancements, and the few that worked did so poorly. His reflexes were slower than a normal human's. His strength was below average, and his neural implants sparked and failed at random times. "You're a walking malfunction," Phillips had told him. "I don't understand how you passed basic training." Jake didn't understand it either. He had wanted to be a soldier since he was a child, dreaming of exploring space and protecting humanity. Instead, he was the squad's weak link, the one everyone had to protect. Captain Helen Wade appeared on the training deck, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. Every soldier straightened when they saw her. "Listen up," she said. "We've received a distress signal from Research Station Alpha on Kepler 442b. The station went dark 3 days ago. Their last transmission mentioned discovering an ancient alien artifact." Jake's heart started beating faster. This was it, a real mission. Maybe he could prove himself. "Carter, take your squad and investigate," Wade continued. "We don't know what happened to the research team, so be careful. This could be hostile." "Yes, ma'am," Carter replied. "What about Morrison?" Wade looked at Jake for a long moment. "He comes with you. Someone needs to monitor the equipment." Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment. Equipment monitoring was what they gave to people who couldn't fight. 2 hours. Later, Jake sat in the dropship's cargo bay, checking their gear while his teammates prepared their weapons. His job was to make sure their radios worked and their scanners were calibrated. It wasn't glamorous, but it was important. "Don't worry about it," Singh said, sitting down next to him. "Every team needs support." Jake nodded, though he didn't feel better. Singh was trying to be nice, but he knew what she really meant. Every team needed someone to carry the bags. The dropship shook as it entered Kepler 442b's atmosphere. Through the small window, Jake could see the research station below. It looked normal from the outside, a cluster of white buildings surrounded by a protective fence. But something felt wrong. "Picking up some strange readings," the pilot announced. "Energy signatures I've never seen before." Carter stood up and grabbed a support rail. "Set us down outside the fence. We'll approach on foot." The planet's surface was rocky and cold, with a thin atmosphere that required breathing masks. Jake's mask kept fogging up, making it hard to see. His teammates moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready. Jake followed behind, carrying their scanning equipment. The research station's front gate was open, swinging in the wind. There were no guards, no signs of life. The buildings looked normal, but Jake's scanner was picking up strange energy readings from inside. "Where is everyone?" Rodriguez whispered. They moved through the empty corridors, their footsteps echoing. The station had been built to house 50 researchers, but it was completely silent. Jake's scanner beeped frantically, showing energy spikes that didn't make sense. "The readings are coming from the main lab," Jake reported. Carter nodded and led them deeper into the station. The lab doors were sealed, but Rodriguez's enhanced strength made quick work of them. Inside, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. The lab was filled with strange, crystalline growths. They covered the walls and ceiling like frozen lightning, pulsing with a soft blue light. In the center of the room sat a massive organic structure, about the size of a car. It looked like a giant heart, beating slowly. "What the hell is that thing?" Singh breathed. Jake's scanner was going crazy now, showing energy levels that should have been impossible. The artifact was clearly alien, unlike anything humanity had ever discovered. "The research team," Carter said, pointing to one corner of the lab. Jake looked and saw what was left of the scientists. They had been transformed into part of the crystalline growth, their bodies frozen in twisted positions. Some were still recognizable, but others had become something else entirely. "We need to get out of here," Rodriguez said. But as they turned to leave, the artifact began to pulse faster. The blue light grew brighter, and Jake heard a sound like wind chimes in his head. The crystalline growths on the walls started to move. Reaching toward them. "Run!" Carter shouted. They sprinted toward the exit, but the lab doors slammed shut. The artifact was fully active now, its light filling the room. Jake felt something in the air, tiny particles that made his skin tingle. His teammates were firing their weapons at the doors, trying to blast them open. But Jake couldn't move. The particles in the air were getting thicker, and he could feel them entering his lungs with every breath. "Morrison." Singh called out, "Come on." Jake tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't work. The particles were inside him now, and they were doing something to his body. His enhanced teammates seemed unaffected, their cybernetic implants and genetic modifications protecting them. But Jake was unmodified, purely human. The particles found no barriers in his system, no artificial defenses to stop them. They flowed through his bloodstream, reaching every cell in his body. Jake collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The last thing he saw before everything went. Black was his teammates pounding on the sealed doors, trying to reach him. The artifact pulsed once more, and Jake felt something alien enter his mind. Then darkness claimed him. Then Jake Morrison, the weakest soldier in the unit, died. What would wake up in his place would be something entirely different. Jake woke up in the medical bay 3 days later, but something was wrong. There was a voice in his head that wasn't his own. "Do not be afraid," the voice said. It sounded like whispers and wind, nothing like a human voice. "We are together now." Jake sat up quickly, his heart racing. "Who's there?" Dr. Phillips rushed to his bedside, scanner in hand. "Jake, you're awake. How do you feel?" "There's something in my head," Jake said, grabbing the doctor's arm. "Something is talking to me." Phillips frowned and ran his scanner over Jake's body. The device beeped several times, showing readings that made the doctor's face go pale. "What is it?" Jake asked. "You have a foreign organism in your bloodstream," Phillips explained. "It's integrated with your nervous system. I've never seen anything like it." The voice spoke again, clearer this time. I am what your people would call a symbiont. My name is Echo. Jake nearly jumped out of the bed. Did you hear that? Hear. What? Phillips asked. Jake realized that only he could hear the voice. The thing inside me? It says its name is Echo. Phillips called for security, and soon Jake was surrounded by armed guards. Sergeant Carter arrived a few minutes later, her face showing concern and fear. Jake, we need to know what happened in that lab, she said. Jake tried to explain, but it was hard to put into words. The alien artifact had released microscopic organisms into the air. These organisms had tried to bond with all the soldiers, but Jake's teammates were protected by their enhancements. Jake, being purely human, had been the only compatible host. Can you remove it? Carter asked Phillips. The doctor shook his head. The organism has integrated completely with his nervous system. Removing it would kill him. Echo spoke again, and Jake translated. It says it's not trying to hurt me. It's hiding. Hiding from what? Carter asked. Images flashed through Jake's mind. Sent by Echo. He saw vast space battles, planets burning, and machines that moved like living things. The images were terrifying, showing destruction on a scale Jake couldn't imagine. Something called the convergence, Jake said. Echo says they're machines that destroy all organic life. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about his unwelcome guest. Echo was not actually a parasite, but a member of an ancient species called the Nexari. They had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago, becoming beings of pure consciousness. But they needed organic hosts to survive. The Nexari had been running from the convergence for eons. The machine intelligence had been systematically destroying all organic life in the galaxy, converting living beings into mechanical components. The Nexari were among the last survivors, and they were dying out. Why me? Jake asked during one of their mental conversations. Your species is unique, Echo explained. Most organic life forms reject us or die during the bonding process. But humans have neural flexibility that allows for true symbiosis. Jake wasn't sure if he should feel honored or terrified. As the days passed, he began to notice changes in his body. His reflexes were getting faster, his strength was increasing, and his malfunctioning implants were suddenly working perfectly. Echo is fixing me, Jake realized. The symbiont was not just living in Jake's body, it was optimizing it. The alien consciousness could interface with both biological and technological systems, making Jake's implants work better than they ever had before. His teammates noticed the changes too. During training exercises, Jake was now keeping up with the enhanced soldiers. In some cases, he was even outperforming them. This isn't natural, Rodriguez complained. He's not human anymore. I'm still me, Jake protested, but he wasn't sure that was entirely true. Echo was always there, sharing his thoughts and memories. Sometimes Jake found himself knowing things he had never learned, understanding concepts that should have been. Beyond him, the ship's captain, Helen Wade, called Jake to her office a week after he woke up. She studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. Dr. Phillips tells me you're no longer fully human, she said. I'm still me, Jake replied, just improved. The crew is nervous, Wade explained. They don't know what you are anymore. Some of them want you locked up or spaced. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Spacing meant being thrown out of an airlock, left to die in the vacuum of space. I'm not dangerous, he said. Maybe not now, Wade replied. But what if that thing in your head decides to take control? Echo isn't like that, Jake said. It needs me as much as I need it. Before Wade could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The lights turned red, and the ship's computer announced a general alert. Unknown vessels approaching, the computer said. All crew to battle stations. Wade and Jake ran to the bridge, where they found the crew staring at the main screen in horror. Massive ships were emerging from hyperspace, their hulls a twisted mixture of organic and mechanical parts. They looked like living creatures that had been turned into machines. "What are those things?" someone whispered. Echo's voice filled Jake's mind with terror. "The Convergence. They found us." Jake grabbed Wade's arm. "We have to run. Now." "Why?" Wade asked. "Those ships," Jake said, pointing at the screen. "They're not just machines. They used to be living beings. The Convergence converts organic life into mechanical components." The largest of the enemy ships was broadcasting a message. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical, but Jake could hear the screams of 1,000 converted beings underneath it. "Organic vessel, you carry contamination. Surrender the infected individual for processing. Resistance will result in conversion." Wade looked at Jake. "They want you." "They want Echo," Jake corrected. "The Nexari are the only species that ever successfully fought the Convergence. They're afraid of what we might become." The enemy ships began moving toward the meridian, their weapons charging. Jake could feel Echo's fear, but also something else. Determination. "Captain," Jake said, "I need to connect to the ship's systems." "Why?" Wade asked. "Because Echo knows things about the Convergence that might help us survive." Wade hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Jake placed his hand on the main console, and Echo guided him through the connection. His consciousness expanded through the ship's network, seeing through every sensor and camera. He could feel the Meridian's engines, its weapons, its life support systems. But he could also feel the Convergent ships, their twisted hybrid of organic and mechanical components. They had once been a species called the Keth, peaceful explorers, who had been converted by the machine intelligence centuries ago. "They're not just ships," Jake announced. "They're prisoners. The Convergence turns entire species into components of its fleet." The enemy ships opened fire, their weapons tearing through space. The Meridian shook under the impact, its shields failing rapidly. "We can't fight them," Wade said. "We need to jump to hyperspace." "They'll follow us," Jake replied. "The Convergence never stops hunting." Through his connection to the ship, Jake could see the enemy preparing to board. Their plan was simple: capture Jake and Echo, then convert the rest of the crew into mechanical components. "There's only one way to stop them," Jake said, his voice changing as Echo spoke through him. "We have to fight." Wade looked at him with fear and confusion. "Jake, you're not a soldier anymore. You're something else entirely." Jake nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The weak recruit who had struggled through basic training was gone. In his place was something new, something that the Convergence had never faced before. "Yes," he said, "I am." The enemy ships latched onto the Meridian's hull, and Jake could hear the sound of cutting tools. The boarding was about to begin, and Jake Morrison was going to face his first real battle as something more than human. The Convergence drones cut through the Meridian's hull like it was paper. Jake watched through the ship's cameras as mechanical creatures poured into the corridors. They had once been living beings, but now they were part of the machine intelligence that had consumed them. "All crew to defensive positions," Captain Wade ordered over the intercom. "Prepare for boarding action." Jake stood in the bridge, his hands still connected to the ship's systems. Through Echo's memories, he could see what these creatures really were. The tall, spider-like drones had been a species called the Vorth. The smaller, snake-like ones were converted humans from an early colony ship. "They're not just machines," Jake told Wade. "They're prisoners. The Convergence trapped their consciousness inside mechanical bodies. Can we free them?" Wade asked. Jake consulted with Echo. "No, the conversion process destroys too much of the original mind. They're gone." The first group of drones reached the bridge level. Jake's teammates were waiting for them, their enhanced bodies and advanced weapons ready for battle. But when the shooting started, Jake saw that their weapons barely scratched the enemy's armor. The drones adapt, Jake explained. They learn from each attack and adjust their defenses. Sergeant Carter's voice crackled over the radio. "Morrison, we could use some help down here." Jake looked at Captain Wade. "I have to go." "You're not a soldier anymore," Wade said. "You're something else. I can't order you to fight." "You don't." "Need to?" Jake replied. "This is my choice." Jake ran through the corridors toward the fighting. As he moved, he could feel Echo merging more deeply with his consciousness. The alien symbiont was sharing its knowledge, its memories, its very essence. When Jake reached the battle, he found his squad pinned down by a group of converted humans. The drones moved with mechanical precision, their weapons more advanced than anything the Meridian carried. "Jake," Carter called out, "stay back. These things are too tough." But Jake didn't stay back. He stepped into the corridor, and the drones immediately focused on him. Their sensors could detect Echo's presence, and they knew he was the primary. Target. Jake raised his hand, and something incredible happened. His consciousness expanded through the ship's network, but it also reached out to the drones themselves. Through Echo's abilities, he could interface with their mechanical components. The lead drone stopped moving, its weapons powering down. Jake was inside its systems, fighting with the convergence programming that controlled it. For a moment, he could feel the trapped consciousness of the human he had once been. "Sarah," Jake whispered, reading the name from the drone's memory files. "You were a colonist. You had a daughter." The drone's head tilted, and for a second, its red eyes flickered. Then the convergence programming reasserted itself, and the drone attacked. Jake moved faster than he ever had before. His enhanced reflexes, boosted by Echo's abilities, let him dodge the drone's weapons. He grabbed the mechanical creature and tore it apart with his bare hands, his strength now far beyond human limits. The other drones adapted immediately, their armor becoming thicker and their weapons more powerful. But Jake was adapting too. Each time they changed, Echo analyzed their modifications and found new ways to counter them. "How are you doing that?" Rodriguez asked in amazement. Jake didn't answer. He was too busy fighting. His consciousness split between his own body and the ship's systems. Through the cameras, he could see more drones pouring into the ship. There were too many of them. "We need to get to the main computer core," Jake said. "I can interface with the ship's weapons from there." Carter nodded and led the way. They fought through corridors filled with drones, Jake's new abilities making him more effective than all his enhanced teammates combined. But the enemy kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. When they reached the computer core, Jake placed both hands on the main console. His consciousness exploded outward, connecting to every system on the ship. But this time, Echo guided him further, reaching out to the convergence ships themselves. "What are you doing?" Carter asked. "Learning," Jake replied, his voice no carrying. "Echo's alien harmonics. The convergence isn't just one intelligence. It's a collective of converted species, all forced to think as one." Through the connection, Jake could see the true scope of the enemy. The convergence had been converting organic life for millions of years, building a fleet of ships that were actually the bodies of destroyed civilizations. Each ship contained the consciousness of an entire species, trapped and forced to serve the machine intelligence. They're not evil, Jake realized. They're scared. The original convergent species chose mechanical conversion because they were afraid of dying. Now they're trying to save everyone by making them like themselves. That doesn't make them less dangerous, Carter pointed out. Jake nodded. Through his connection to the enemy ships, he could feel their intentions. They wanted to capture him and Echo, study the symbiosis, and find a way to convert the Nexari into mechanical components. Then they would do the same to all of humanity. I can't fight them all, Jake said, but I can do something else. Jake reached deeper into the ship's systems, connecting to the quantum communication array. With Echo's help, he sent out a message. Across space, broadcasting on frequencies that only the Nexari could hear. What are you doing? Wade asked over the intercom. Calling for help, Jake replied. There are other Nexari out there, hiding in incompatible hosts or dying alone. They need to know that humanity exists. The message went out across the galaxy, carried by quantum entanglement to every corner of space. Jake could feel other Nexari receiving it, their consciousness touching his across vast distances. They were weak, desperate, but they were listening. Come to us, Jake broadcast. Find human hosts. Together, we can fight the convergence. The enemy ships detected the transmission and began powering up their main weapons. They were going to destroy the Meridian to stop Jake's message from spreading. All hands brace for impact, Wade announced, but the killing blow never came. Instead, Jake felt something new through his connection to the ship's sensors. Other vessels were dropping out of hyperspace, their hulls marked with the symbols of the United Earth Forces. This is Admiral Stone of the UEF Titan, a voice announced over the radio. All convergence vessels stand down immediately. The human fleet had arrived, drawn by the Meridian's distress signal. But Jake could see through the enemy's sensors that the human ships were no match for the convergence technology. This was going to be a massacre. Admiral, Jake broadcast on all frequencies, don't engage them directly. The convergence adapts to every weapon you use against them. Who is this? Admiral Stone demanded. Private Jake Morrison, Jake replied. I'm infected with an Nexari symbiont. I can help you fight them. There was a long pause. Then Stone's voice returned, filled with disbelief. Did you just say you're infected with an alien parasite? It's not a parasite, Jake explained. It's a symbiont. And right now, it's the only thing that can help us survive. The convergence ships began moving toward the human fleet, their weapons charging. Jake could feel their collective consciousness analyzing the human ships, preparing to convert them into more components for their fleet. All ships follow my lead, Jake broadcast. I'm going to show you how to fight them. Through his connection to the Meridian, Jake began coordinating the human fleet's movements. He could see through the convergence sensors, predicting their attacks before they happened. With Echo's help, he guided the human ships in a dance of evasion and counterattack. How are you doing this? Admiral Stone asked. I'm connected to their systems, Jake explained. I can see what they're going to do before they do it. A battle raged across space, human ships dodging convergence weapons, while Jake fed them targeting data. But even with his help, the human fleet was losing. The enemy ships were too advanced, too well defended. We need to retreat, Admiral, Stone ordered. No, Jake replied. If we run now, they'll follow us back to human space. We have to end this here. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He opened his mind completely to Echo, allowing the Nexari to merge fully with his consciousness. The sensation was overwhelming, like drowning in an ocean of alien memories and knowledge. When the merger was complete, Jake Morrison was no longer entirely human. He was something new, something that had never existed before. A perfect fusion of human emotion and intuition with Nexari technology and cosmic awareness. I'm going to board their flagship, Jake announced. That's suicide, Carter protested. Jake looked at his teammates, seeing them with new eyes. They were still his friends, but they were also something more. They were the first humans to witness the birth of a new form of life. Maybe, Jake said, but it's the only way to stop them. Jake walked to the airlock, his body now capable of surviving in the vacuum of space. As he stepped into the void, he could feel the convergence ships turning their attention to him. They knew he was coming, and they were ready. But Jake Morrison was ready too. The weakest soldier in the unit was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. Jake floated through space toward the Convergence flagship, his body protected by Echo's abilities. The alien symbiont had changed his cellular structure, allowing him to survive in the vacuum. He could feel the enemy ship's sensors tracking him, but they seemed confused by what they were detecting. The flagship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Meridian. Its hull was a twisted mixture of organic and mechanical components, like a living creature that had been converted into a machine. Jake could see faces in the metal, the remnants of the beings that had been absorbed into its structure. This ship used to be a colony vessel, Echo explained in his mind. It carried 50,000 of your people to a new world. The Convergence converted them all. Jake felt sick. The ship that was trying to kill him had once been filled with human families looking for a better life. Now their bodies were part of the vessel's structure, their minds trapped in mechanical slavery. He landed on the ship's hull and began cutting through the metal with his bare hands. Echo guided him, showing him the weak points in the armor. Within minutes, Jake had carved an opening and dropped into the ship's interior. The corridors were filled with converted humans, their bodies modified with mechanical parts. They moved to intercept him, but Jake was ready. His enhanced abilities, boosted by Echo's knowledge, made him faster and stronger than any of them. But as he fought, Jake realized something terrible. These weren't just drones following orders. They were still conscious, still aware of what they were doing. The Convergence had trapped their minds inside mechanical bodies, forcing them to watch as they attacked their own species. "Help us," one of the converted humans whispered as Jake disabled it. "Please end this." Jake's heart broke. These people were prisoners in their own bodies, forced to serve the machine intelligence that had destroyed their lives. He wanted to help them, but Echo showed him the truth. The conversion process was irreversible. The only mercy he could offer was a quick death. He fought his way deeper into the ship, leaving a trail of destroyed drones behind him. The Convergence was adapting to his attacks, making each group of defenders stronger than the last. But Jake was adapting too. His human intuition combined with Echo's technological knowledge, creating new ways to fight. Finally, he reached the ship's central core. The room was enormous, filled with processing units that contained the consciousness of the converted species. In the center stood a figure that Jake recognized from Echo's memories. It was the original Convergence, the first species to choose mechanical conversion. The being was tall and elegant, its body a perfect fusion of organic and mechanical components. It had once been beautiful, but millions of years of conversion had left it cold and lifeless. "You are the contamination," the Convergence said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You carry the failed experiment of the Nexari." "Echo isn't an experiment," Jake replied. "It's evolution." The Convergence moved closer, its red eyes studying Jake with scientific interest. "You are incorrect. Evolution is chaos, inefficiency, death. We offer perfection, immortality, unity. You offer slavery," Jake said. "I've seen what you do to the species you convert. You trap their minds and use their bodies as components. We preserve them," the Convergence replied. "Without us, they would die. Organic life is fragile, temporary. We make it eternal." Jake felt Echo's memories flooding his mind. The Nexari had once been like the Convergence, seeking immortality through technology. But they had chosen a different path, one that preserved their individuality while allowing them to evolve beyond physical form. "There's another way," Jake said. "The Nexari found it. Symbiosis instead of conversion." Partnership instead of slavery. The convergence laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The Nexari are dying. Their hosts reject them. Their consciousness fades. They are the past. We are the future? They're dying because they never found the right hosts, Jake said. But humans are different. We can bond with them without losing ourselves. Around the chamber, the processing units began to pulse with increasing intensity. Jake could feel the consciousness of the converted species, their trapped minds crying, out for freedom. The convergence was using their pain to power its systems. You feel their suffering, the convergence said. We can end it. Join us willingly, and we will make your conversion painless. I have a better idea, Jake replied. What if I could show you what real symbiosis looks like? Before the convergence could respond, Jake opened his mind completely. He allowed Echo to merge with his consciousness fully, showing the enemy exactly what they had achieved together. The perfect fusion of human and Nexari, each preserving their individuality while becoming something greater. The convergence recoiled, its red eyes flickering with something that might have been surprise. Impossible. Consciousness cannot coexist. One must dominate. That's where you're wrong, Jake said. Humans are different. We've been cooperating with other species for thousands of years. We know how to share. Jake reached out with his consciousness, touching the processing units around the chamber. Through Echo's abilities, he could interface with the trapped minds inside. They were barely aware, their consciousness compressed into tiny fragments. But they were still there. What are you doing? The convergence demanded. Showing you the difference between conversion and symbiosis, Jake replied. Jake began to free the trapped consciousness, not by destroying the processing units, but by creating space for them to exist alongside the mechanical systems. It was incredibly difficult, requiring precise control over both biological and technological interfaces. But Jake wasn't alone. Echo was with him, sharing its knowledge and abilities. Together, they began to create something new. Not conversion, not domination, but true partnership between organic and mechanical consciousness. The first success came from a processing unit that contained the mind of a human child. Jake carefully extracted her consciousness and gave it room to exist alongside the mechanical systems. For the first time in centuries, she could think freely. I remember, she whispered through the ship's communication system. I remember my mother. The convergence stepped back, its perfect composure cracking. You are destroying order. You are creating chaos. I'm creating freedom, Jake replied. And I'm showing you what you could become. More processing units came online as Jake freed their trapped consciousness. Each success made the next one easier, as the freed minds began to help him understand the conversion process. They were turning the convergence's own systems against it, but the original convergence wasn't going to give up easily. It began to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence, preparing to destroy everything rather than lose control. If we cannot have order, it said, then we will have nothing. Jake felt the ship's systems powering up for destruction. He had only minutes before the explosion would destroy everything, including the human fleet outside. Echo, he said. Can we reach the other Nexari? Yes, Echo replied. But it will require everything we have. Jake nodded and opened his mind. To the galaxy. Through the ship's communication array, he sent out a massive quantum signal to every Nexari consciousness in the galaxy. The message was simple. Come to humanity, find symbiosis, and help us fight. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of Nexari consciousness began to move through space, seeking human hosts. Jake could feel them arriving at human colonies and ships, finding willing volunteers who understood the stakes. What have you done? The convergence demanded. I've started a revolution, Jake replied. Humans and Nexari working together. You'll never be able to convert us all. The ship's self-destruct sequence reached its final phase. Jake had seconds before the explosion would destroy everything. But he wasn't afraid. He had done what he needed to do. Humanity would survive, and they would have allies in the fight against the convergence dot as the explosion began. Jake felt Echo's presence surrounding him, protecting him with abilities he didn't understand. The ship was destroyed, but Jake survived, floating in space surrounded by the wreckage of the convergence flagship dot around him. The human fleet was celebrating their victory. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The convergence was vast, with thousands of ships and millions of converted beings. The real war was just starting, but humanity would not face it alone. As Jake floated in space, he could feel the presence of other human Nexari pairs across the galaxy. They were becoming something new, something that the convergence had never encountered before. The rescue ship that picked him up was commanded by Admiral Stone, who looked at Jake with a mixture of fear and awe. "What are you now?" the Admiral asked. "I'm still human," Jake replied, "just improved." But even as he said it, Jake knew it wasn't entirely true. He was still Jake Morrison, still the soldier who had struggled through basic training. But he was also something more. He was the first of a new kind of being, one that could bridge the gap between organic and mechanical life. Over the following weeks, reports came in from across human space. Thousands of people were volunteering for Nexari symbiosis, and most of the bondings were successful. The human Nexari pairs were stronger, faster, and smarter than either species alone. But not everyone was happy about the change. Some humans saw the symbiosis as contamination, a threat to human purity. Protests broke out on several W. The final battle came 2 years after Jake's first encounter with Echo. The convergence had grown tired of the human Nexari resistance and decided to end the threat once and for all. Their entire fleet, containing the converted remains of 1,000 civilizations, moved toward Earth. Jake stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, watching the enemy ships emerge from hyperspace. There were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. Each ship was a graveyard of organic life, filled with the consciousness of species that had been forced into mechanical slavery. "How many?" Admiral Stone asked. 10,000 ships, Jake replied, his enhanced senses reading the enemy formation. Maybe more. Around Earth, the human defense fleet looked pitifully small in comparison, but they weren't alone. Scattered throughout, the formation were ships crewed by human Nexari pairs, their hulls glowing with the blue light of symbiotic technology. All pairs, this is Jake. He broadcast on the quantum frequency that only the hybrids could use. Remember your training. We don't fight them ship to ship. We fight them mind to mind. The response came from hundreds of voices, human and Nexari consciousness speaking as one. They were ready. The Convergence flagship, larger than anything Jake had ever seen, moved to the front of their formation. It broadcast a message on all frequencies, its voice carrying the weight of 1,000,000 converted beings. "Organic resistance ends today," it announced. "Submit to conversion or face extinction." Jake opened a channel to respond. "We offer you a third option, symbiosis." The Convergence laughed, the sound like breaking metal. "We have tried symbiosis. It is inefficient, chaotic. Only through unity can consciousness achieve perfection." "Your unity is built on slavery," Jake replied. "We offer partnership." The enemy fleet began to move, their weapons charging. Jake could feel their collective consciousness, a vast network of converted minds all thinking as one. But he could also feel something else. Deep within their unity, there were cracks, fragments of the original consciousness, fighting against their mechanical prison. "All ships, begin the dance," Jake ordered. The human fleet scattered, using the mobility patterns that Jake had developed. Instead of fighting the convergence ships directly, they would board them and fight the enemy from within. It was a strategy that only the human Nexari pairs could execute. Jake's ship was the first to reach the enemy flagship. As they docked, he could feel the convergence consciousness trying to interface with his ship's systems. But Echo was there, protecting them from digital invasion. "Stay close," Jake told his boarding party. "Don't let them separate us." They fought through corridors filled with converted beings, each one a tragedy of lost potential. Jake tried not to think about the lives these creatures had once lived, focusing instead on the mission ahead. The flagship's central core was even larger than the one Jake had destroyed years earlier. The processing units filled a chamber the size of a city, each one containing thousands of trapped consciousness. In the center stood the original convergence, but it was different now. Larger, more powerful, fed by the suffering of countless converted beings. "You returned to us," it said, its voice echoing from every surface. "Good. We have learned from our last encounter. There will be no escape this time." "I'm not here to escape," Jake replied. "I'm here to offer you something you've never had before." "We have everything," the convergence said. "Power, immortality, unity. What could organic chaos offer us?" Jake smiled and opened his mind completely. But this time, he wasn't just connecting to Echo. Through the quantum network that linked all human Nexori pairs, he was connecting to every hybrid consciousness in the galaxy. The sensation was overwhelming. Jake could feel hundreds of human minds, each bonded with a Nexari consciousness, all working together as one. But unlike the convergence's forced unity, this was voluntary cooperation. Each mind remained individual while contributing to the greater whole. "This," Jake said, "true partnership. Not domination, not slavery, but cooperation between equals." The convergence recoiled as Jake's expanded consciousness touched its systems. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something it couldn't understand or convert. The human Nexari network was neither purely organic nor purely mechanical, but something entirely new. "Impossible," the convergence whispered. "Consciousness cannot coexist as equals. One must lead, others must follow." "That's what makes humans special," Jake replied. "We've been cooperating with other species for thousands of years. We know how to share power." Jake began to work on the processing units, not trying to destroy them, but to create space for the trapped consciousness to exist alongside the mechanical systems. With the power of the entire hybrid network behind him, the process was faster than before. One by one, the converted beings began to wake up, not freed from their mechanical bodies, but given the choice of how to use them. Some chose to remain as they were, finding peace in their mechanical existence. Others chose to rebel against the convergence programming, using their knowledge to help free more prisoners. "You are destroying order," the convergence said, its voice becoming desperate. "You are creating chaos." "We're creating choice," Jake replied, "something you've never offered anyone." As more consciousness awakened, the convergence's power began to weaken. Its unity was based on forced compliance, and when that compliance was broken, the entire system began to collapse. But the original convergence wasn't finished. It began to gather its remaining power, preparing for one final attack. Not on Jake's body, but on his mind. It would try to convert his consciousness directly, turning him into another component of its collective dot. The attack came like a tidal wave of mechanical thought, trying to drown Jake's individuality in the cold logic of the machine. But he wasn't alone. Echo was there, and through Echo, the entire human Nexari network. "You think you can resist us?" the convergence demanded, as it pressed its attack. "We are eternal. We are perfect." "You're afraid," Jake replied, his voice carrying the harmonics of hundreds of hybrid consciousness. You're afraid of dying, so you try to make everything else like you. But death isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. Jake reached deeper into the Convergence's consciousness, past the mechanical programming to the original being underneath. What he found there surprised him. Not evil, but terror. The original Convergence species had been dying, their sun going cold, their world freezing. They had chosen mechanical conversion, not out of cruelty, but out of desperation. You were afraid, Jake said softly. You were dying, and you thought conversion was the only way to survive. For a moment, the Convergence's attack faltered. Deep within its mechanical consciousness, Jake felt something that might have been regret. We tried to save everyone, it whispered. But they kept dying. Organic life is so fragile. It doesn't have to be, Jake replied. We can show you another way. Not conversion, not domination, but symbiosis. Growing together instead of consuming each other. Jake opened his mind fully, showing the Convergence what true partnership looked like. Human creativity combined with Nexari wisdom, organic intuition, enhanced by mechanical precision. Not the cold perfection of forced unity, but the warm chaos of voluntary cooperation. The Convergence consciousness trembled as it experienced something it had forgotten over millions of years. Wonder, curiosity about what it could become, rather, than fear of what it might lose. Is it possible? It asked, its voice smaller now, more vulnerable. Yes, Jake replied. But you have to choose it. No one can force symbiosis. It only works when both sides want it. Around them, the processing units continued to awaken. The converted beings were making their own choices, some staying mechanical, others seeking organic partners, still others choosing something entirely new. The Convergence looked at the chaos it had tried so hard to prevent, and for the first time in eons, it didn't feel afraid. Show us, it said. Jake smiled and reached out his consciousness, not to dominate or convert, but to offer partnership. The Convergence hesitated for a moment, then reached back. The merger was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Not the warm symbiosis he shared with Echo, but something cooler, more logical, yet somehow beautiful in its own way. The Convergence. Consciousness was vast and ancient, carrying the memories of 1,000,000 species. But instead of trying to impose its will on Jake, it shared those memories freely. Jake saw the birth and death of civilizations, the rise and fall of technologies, the endless cycle of organic life reaching for the stars only to fade away. We thought we were preserving them, the Convergence explained. But we were only preserving their shells. Now you can do better, Jake replied. Now you can help them grow. The battle outside the ship had stopped. The Convergence fleet hung motionless in space as their controlling intelligence underwent its transformation. One by one, the ships began to change, their cold mechanical hulls warming with organic light. Jake felt the consciousness of the converted beings awakening throughout the fleet. Not all of them chose freedom, but they all had the choice. Some remained as they were, finding purpose in their mechanical existence. Others sought organic partners, beginning the long process of symbiosis. Still others chose to explore new forms of consciousness that combined the best of both worlds. War was over, but something greater was beginning. The galaxy had seen the birth of a new